Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June 2018 Wikimedia Foundation metrics meeting. We're going to start off today with our agenda. We have two, other than the regular movement update, we have two presentations. We have Joe Mattazzoni with the map improvements, the recent map improvements on the projects, as well as James Forrester and Abby Ripstra, who will be showing a presentation on their recent work on trying to understand the many different workflows that our editors use across the projects. If you can save your questions for after all of the presentations. We're going to have a question mic over here on my left in the office, and Joe Sutherland as user Fox will be in Wikimedia-Office on IRC, as well as trying to watch the YouTube chat and comments if there are any questions there. Starting off with the movement update, we had last Wednesday on June 20th, the Wikimedia Foundation turned 15, being founded 15 years ago in Florida, before finally moving up here a couple years later. We also wrapped up the Wikimedia Hackathon, the annual hackathon. I don't know what number this was, but with over 240 participants in 27 countries. About 20% of those participants were women, and that wrapped up right at the end of May. As well as the Wikimedia Foundation joined the Equals Partnership, which is a growing network of groups, both corporations, nonprofits, UN groups that are working together to bridge the gender gap across the digital landscape, not only on the internet, but through the technical sphere. And coming up in July, first off, we have the second Celtic Knot Conference, which is hosted by the National Library of Wales and Wikimedia UK, looking on both how the Wikimedia projects can help to work on both Celtic languages and indigenous languages in general. We also have the 14th annual Wikimania, which will be held this year for the first time in sub-Saharan Africa, in Cape Town, South Africa. And this year's conference is going to be co-organized by both the Wikimedia Foundation and Wikimedia South Africa, and more than 600 attendees are expected. For those who aren't able to attend, we are hoping to get as many of the big presentations up early and during the conference so that people can watch those as well. And then coming up, we will have Joe Mattazzoni talking about map improvements.
Wait, I need the clicker though. Okay. Good morning. I'm Joe Mattazzoni. I'm going to talk about a project that the collaboration team is just finishing up that we hope will make the wide world just a little bit easier to understand. Oops, why am I not on my, oh. They're not the same? Yeah, go ahead and put the slides over there. All right, great. And so, it's called Map Improvements 2018. Imagine, if you will, that you wanted to learn about a foreign land, but the only map you had was in a mysterious script that you couldn't read. That sounds like a plot twist from some adventure story, but it's actually the situation that readers on the wikis often found themselves in until quite recently. So what do I mean by that? If you look closely here, you'll see that this map is a babel of different languages and alphabets. And it's demonstrating one of the main limitations that our Wikimap service has had until very recently, which is that it displayed maps in the language of the territory mapped rather than of the reader. So we could call that the local language. So it displays it in the local language. And if you look at this map, so you'll see that there are no fewer than 8 completely different alphabets that are being displayed here. This is from right to left. That's Japanese, Korean, Chinese. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. Chinese, Laotian, Thai, Burmese, Latin script for India, and up here in Kyrgyzstan, the Cyrillic script. So not a great user experience, right? Let's back up a little bit. The maps on the wikis are created by an extension called Cartographer, and they have some great advantages. They're pretty easy to make. All you really need to do is add the latitude and longitude, and the software will generate it automatically. You can do that. If you're a programmer, you can do that programmatically. If you're not, you can actually use Visual Editor to just drag the map into the right location and place it. They're open source. They use geodata from the OpenStreetMap project, which is an open source project. And they have a lot of information. You can pan them, you can zoom them, you can add markers and shaded shapes to highlight certain features and things like that. So, and of course, as the world changes, as borders and place names change, they will stay up to date automatically if the people at OpenStreetMap are doing their work. So potentially very useful. Also, of course, a traditional form of data for encyclopedias, which are always been full of maps. But there's problems. Did I not change? Oh, this one's not staying up. That's why I'm getting confused. So there's some problems. We talked about the language support, that they display only in the local language. Also, the technology was in need of a lot of updating and standardization and general repair. And partly for those reasons, these were not available on, this is still not updating. Okay, these were not available on most Wikipedias. The vast majority of Wikipedias, you could link to an interactive map, but you couldn't. But editors couldn't place it right on the page using a feature called Map Frame that embeds it on the page. So problems, but help was on the way. Some of you know that Santa dogs are all agents of the community wish list, highly trained in wish granting. And in 2017, the community, the MAPS community, got behind the wish list proposal cartographer improvements and voted it to be the #1 wish that year. And its main wish was map internationalization, which means to display the map in the language of the user. And so in January of this year, the collaboration team got the assignment to fix the various problems that I've just been talking about, and we began a 6-month engagement to do that, called Map Improvements 2018. Teaching cartographer to display maps in every language on the planet and script was a challenge. Needless to say, I'm going to spare you the gory details of that. But suffice to say that after a lot of painstaking work, last month we, in fact, released Map Internationalization. And I could show some screenshots, but I'm going to try a live demo. So, Brendan, if you would. The map here is the one you were just looking at with the babble of different languages. And I'm going to use a new command that we created called lang equals to change that to English. Ta-da! So, thank you. This is how this map would display on English-speaking wiki, and here's how it would display on a Russian wiki. Now it's in Cyrillic. Here's how it would display on a French wiki. I could do this all day. It's like magic, right? So let's see. At the same time, I'll just mention, so what I'm doing here, that's not how it would work on the wiki. I'm just doing this for the demo. On the wiki, the way it works is the software tries to display every feature in a map feature in the language, the content language of that wiki. And if it can't find a name in that language for that feature, because this is an open source project, so the data that's available varies from language to language and place to place. There's a whole fallback protocol of it tries to use certain fallback languages that have been defined, and then it tries to do some other things, and it eventually falls back to the local language. And you can actually see that's happening here in a couple places where it's fallen back to Chinese. Yeah, so anyway, that's how it works. And at the same time as we, oops, that doesn't advance. At the same time as we released Map Internationalization, We also released the ability to embed maps directly on the page to 277 Wikipedias that previously lacked the feature, including English Wikipedia. And in the week since we did that, our editors have been very busy. And what you see here is a map frame map that's inside an info box on a page that English Wikipedians, I guess it's some sort of project, are using to trace the location of roads and highways. And you can see what I mean by an interactive map. I can pan this, I can zoom in on the Bronx here, etc. And volunteers can code templates like this to pull latitude and longitude data from Wikidata and then marry that with the OpenStreetMap data and display maps like this on hundreds or thousands of pages at once. And so I poked around the wikis a little bit to find a few examples of that. And these are all just from wikis that didn't have the feature until a few weeks ago. Koreans are using MapFrame to pinpoint the location of metro stations. Italians are mapping the locations of football stadiums. In Estonia, they've really gone all in, and they've just gone ahead and made this the template for all towns and cities. And there's over 10,000 of these on Estonian Wiki. And Bengalis are mapping the locations of American universities, like my own alma mater, UC Berkeley. And and before I leave the demo, I wanted to show you an example of a little bit fancier map that I found on English Wikipedia. Somebody really went a little wild here, and they've mapped the location of every football stadium in the UK and added some of the fancier feature. You can see he's added all these little markers, and for each marker, there's a photograph and a link to the Wikipedia page. So pretty cool. Thank you, thank you. And back to the slide deck, please. Okay, there were my backup slides in case that didn't work. Right, so I'm happy to say that in the week since the release, these features have been put to use on the wikis, and users have already placed more than 60,000 of these MapFrame maps on the wikis just since May, and a lot of that through the templates that I was showing you. And let's see, so the Map Improvements Project did a lot more than just internationalization. If you're curious, you can read about it on this page, which is the pointer. This page, which is the project page. If you're interested in trying out MapFrame maps, cartographer maps, there's a really nice help page that Chris Corner, our liaison on the project, completely rewrote. These links are also very useful. They have to do with some of the limitations of the features and workarounds that we provided for those. So those are interesting if you really get into it. And the Map Improvements Project is complete as of this Friday. It was a 6 months engagement, so Collab team is really getting out of the mapping business. But reading, what are they called? Reading engineering will be taking over on maintenance for these features. So this is the page where that work will be documented and discussed. So you can go there if you're interested. I wanted to give credit to the people who actually did all this work. This was officially a collaboration team joint, but we were really helped a lot by the members of the former MAPS team who really had essential expertise and were very generous with their advice. So a round of applause for all these people. Thank you, guys. You're all rock stars. And in closing, I will just say that mapping is one great way to explore and understand the world, and I hope some of these new features will encourage you to give it a try. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Another round of applause for Joe. Then up next, we have James Forrester and Abby Ripster, who are going to be talking about the many different workflows editors use on the projects and their research into that.
Hello. Clicker. Mic check.
Mic check.
Brilliant.
All right.
So hello everyone, I'm James.
And I'm Abby. Yay. Okay, I advance. Okay, so we're going to talk about the contribution taxonomy, a project we worked on. And contributions, by which we mean the work of donating content, including editing and fixing things, adding media, and all the other ways you can contribute, are the lifeblood of our wikis. So these volunteer efforts happen through a whole bunch of different workflows. And our goal of this project was to help teams at the foundation understand which of the workflows were most important to improve the experience for people. So contribution to Wikipedia is complex, and it's hard to see as a whole. Understanding the workflows, like how they work together, the steps, the tools, the permissions that are required to accomplish them, are key to building better experiences. So specifically, we needed to help the mobile platform teams decide which workflows should be improved for people editing on mobile devices. So James is going to walk through several ways you can accomplish one workflow to demonstrate the variation.
Thanks, Abby. So yeah, as Abby said, there are a bunch of different ways to do the same thing, and they vary across wiki and tool. So this is just one workflow, which is you come across something and you think it's spam. This is what it looks like when you're on the Chinese Wikipedia on desktop using Visual Editor and you want to nominate it as spam. You slap in a template. But on Russian, no, that was good. On Russian, if you're in Wikitext, it's a different template. Obviously, the interface looks quite different. On Korean, it looks, again, very different on mobile, and again, another template you have to know about. And finally, some communities, like here, the English Wikipedia, have special community-built tools that help you guide you through the process and knows about all the different things to do. So overall, what we wanted to do is really understand the whole kind of picture across all of the wikis that we were looking at, really understanding the taxonomy of workflows and what the issues were and where we could help. So what did we actually make? So the first thing is a taxonomy. So we wanted to understand, when we talk about contributions, what do we mean? And we broke this down into a few areas that we then kind of have these nice, grand, overwhelming terms for them. So we've got creation and curation, which are pretty similar, but people find that creation is a very important thing to pull out as a separate thing. Moderation is much more about change than about content. So people will be looking at a user, looking at an edit, looking at a change in policy. Then finally, there were three areas that we intentionally pushed as out of scope because we felt that they weren't right for us. Financial contributions are very big and very important, but also pretty different from content contribution. Multimedia has the Structured Data on Commons project already going for it, and we didn't want to interfere with their work. And governance is really big and meaty, but things like, how people engage with an RFC is pretty hard to engage with. So we built an analysis of the 5 wikis we looked at. So that's English, French, Korean, Czech, and Hindi Wikipedias. We did that with our community ambassadors, which was great. And across the whole thing, we ended up identifying 88 workflows that were in scope and about 500 steps across those 88 workflows. So here's one of those workflows. This is what it actually looks like. So you have a workflow built up of multiple steps. Some of those steps, you make a choice. So you do 1A or 1B, and that could be dependent on the content, on the user, on the wiki. Some steps are done by different people. Each step theoretically can be done by a different person. Sometimes they're done by the same person, and sometimes they're optional. At the end of the workflow, you end up, having completed the workflow, and sometimes that's a success, sometimes it's a failure, but it's over. So we then, next. Yeah, we then wanted to analyze those steps and those workflows. So we built a set of criteria, two kind of groups of criteria, one about users, one about how difficult it is. Do you need to know a lot of process? Do you need to be familiar with technology? Do you need to understand the subject really well? The other, very different, is about mobile, as Abby said. We wanted to build this for mobile users especially, and so we're looking at how possible would this be to support a mobile, not necessarily how good is it right now. So we analyzed those 10 criteria, 2 groups of 5, against all 550-ish rows, so we ended up with 5,500 ratings, which was so fun, but really important. And then 5,500 ratings is quite a lot to people to get their heads around, so instead we built a weighting matrix so that teams could identify this criterion is particularly important for users on Android or iOS because they're targeting different users. So that simplified things a bit. So Abby is going to talk about show, don't tell.
Yeah. So not only did we create the master inventory, the criteria, and the weighting system, we created a visualization system. Carolyn Lamado, a designer here at the foundation, thank you, Carolyn, designed the system. And it's flexible, and it consists of elements that can be mixed and matched to describe a workflow. So visualizing the workflows is important for multidisciplinary teams to be able to understand the workflows and the details of them in the same way so they can collaborate well to improve the experience. So here are the basic elements of the system. You can see the user's decisions and the reasoning for that decision, along with their intention as they start the workflow. And then there's a box that describes each step in a workflow. So the step is named along with any role or tools that are required for it to be accomplished. And you can also see within each step which wiki that step is available on. And of course, there's lots of decisions that have to take place. So here's an example of a visualized workflow. It's about tagging an article or section for improvement. There's a handful of things that could be, that an article or section could be tagged for improvement. They're all represented here. This big zoomed in one is about tagging an article or section as needing more context. So now James is going to walk you through the details of one workflow.
Thank you, Abby. So as Abby said, we ended up with these pretty impressively huge workflow diagrams. So this represents copyright violation deletion. The workflows as they exist across the 5 wikis we studied. Not every step of all of these bits of the workflow exists on all 5 wikis, and some of them you're only able to take part in if you have particular rights or a particular context. So let's kind of walk through very quickly what that would look like. So you found an article, you think it's a copy of I/O. What do you do next? Well, you have to make a decision. What process are you going to follow? What's the right thing for you in this context? In this case, we're going to go down the, I think it's maybe a copyright violation. So the way that works is you tag the page as, hey, I think this is a copyright violation. So you tag it with a template. Then someone comes along and reviews that tag and goes, yeah, I agree, or no, I disagree. In this case, they agree, and they add it to the listing. There's an optional step to inform the user, hey, this article you wrote has been nominated. In this case, we won't do that. There's another optional step where people get to come along and say, hey, I'm commenting, I think this is not, and so on and so forth. And finally, someone, an admin generally, comes along and makes an assessment as to agree, yes, this is a problem, and does delete it, or no, they disagree, and they delist it. So in total, we ended up with 10 top workflows. So this is based on those criteria and the selection weightings that we talked about with the teams. So these are the big 10. They're not necessarily big in terms of numbers, although almost all of them are pretty large in aggregate user flow. But in particular, they are really critical. Some of them are pretty simple, like tagging a page. Some of them are really hard, like reviewing the raw feed of edits, patrolling. That's a pretty big workflow. And so that's the kind of pinnacle of what we pulled out and helped the teams look at. Now back to Abby.
Not only is this for informing teams in the foundation about which are the workflows that we need to improve, it's also for everybody. You can use it. So there's a copy of the master inventory available on the Media Wiki page for the project. So and the visualization system and everything is there too. So here are some things that you can do with the taxonomy. You can learn about the details of a specific workflow by going into the master inventory and finding it and checking it out, seeing all the details. Or if it's one of the workflows that's been visualized already, you can go find that visualization and walk through it the way James just walked you through one. So as James said, the master inventory contains workflows from Czech, English, Hindi, French, and Korean wikis. Yeah. And so you can go and look at the workflows of one wiki and see, how, does it use Hotcat? Does it use, what are the things that it uses? How are they workflows accomplished? You can also go and compare across wikis and see, between English and Hindi or Hindi and French, how do the workflows vary? Do they use, what kind of gadgets or things are used or not? And you can also contribute to the taxonomy. It's not only a one-way thing. You can make a copy of the master inventory and add the workflows from your wiki if they're not already there. Make a copy, and then if you need help, we'll be happy to help you with that. You can also build out a workflow that's not already visualized by using the visualization system. All the elements are on the wiki page as SVG files, which you can use a vector editor, graphics editor tool to use. There's some open source ones there too listed. And it would be great to be able to see the system grow. So it would be lovely if people would contribute. James and I are keeping an eye on the talk page, so if anyone needs help or has questions or suggestions, or if you build out your wiki's workflows, add them back there, add your visualizations back. So we'd love to see it grow. So thank you.
Either way.
Oh, he wants that one.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then you can probably sit close because now it's the question and answer time for all those questions you've been holding deeply onto and weren't allowed to ask. Again, we have a question mic here in the audience, in the office, and Joe will be on IRC and trying to watch a YouTube chat in case there are any questions there. Maria just lined up. Do you want to go first?
Hi, this is Maria from Community Engagement. Not very tall. I have a question for the workflows presentation. Thank you so much for making that. I think that's awesome. It has, I think, so much potential. And can I ask 2 questions? Okay, so the first one is, how did you choose the wikis that you looked at?
Hey, so how do we choose the wikis? So initially, we decided we wanted to do English because that's the one I understood myself, pretty well as a community member from English since a long time ago. We also worked with community ambassadors that we already had at the foundation for different tasks already. So from the New Readers project, we had Sadeep, who's speaks Hindi, is from the Hindi community, and so could tell us about the Hindi community and was willing to help us out, which was great. And for the New Editors project, we had Revi from Korean and Martin from Czech wikis. So we already had those kind of close relationships, which really helped make that the right decision. But we also, it wasn't just happenstance. We were also, there's a reason we were working with those communities in the first place from those projects, which is that we think that they capture some of the kind of diversity around size, around different community dynamics that we wanted to look at and understand.
Cool. And the other question I have is, I see that this has a lot of potential to cross this data with specific thematic areas to identify if, when you have to make a decision, is there bias if it in reference to a certain topic. One case study that I'm thinking about is all the work being done to reduce the gender gap, right? And so one common story that people hear is biographies of women get deleted more easily than those of men. And so is there a possibility of crossing this data with the data that you just mined, and how would that work? And if, yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that's a good question, to which the quick answer is I don't know. Abby, do you want to?
I don't really have an idea how to do that. Do you have?
Well, I think what would need to happen is that this process needs to happen again with a focus on a specific theme, maybe. So looking at specifically, for example, these workflows when it comes to content about women, or these workflows when it comes to content about a specific village in a town, something like that.
Okay. I mean, this content is the content inside the master inventory is about the workflows themselves rather than the content within them. But if there are certain workflows that have a particular, that facilitate a bias, we should find those, right?
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Have something to add?
Yeah, I'd say that. So the idea with this work is to be the kind of starting point for looking in audiences to support and better, help the community members doing those workflows. And certainly a key part of that would be thinking, hey, this workflow is too easy. So for example, one of the workflows is tagging an article that this needs cleanup. But if it's easy to tag an article for cleanup and hard to actually know whether or not it's cleaned up, then you build up problems in the community, right? And that's not specific to a bias issue. That's like, in general, you have to be careful that your tools make things better, not worse. I think, here I'm speaking out of turn, I'm sure colleagues across audiences will be really carefully thinking about that. And I think the bias issue coming in on those workflows is something really serious to consider when we're extending, when we're supporting or potentially transforming those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, are there anything?
Yes. This question is kind of it's for Joe and everyone, I guess, who worked on maps. I've heard there are licensing. I'm just reading it verbatim. I heard there are licensing considerations that come into play when editing or displaying map information on Wiki because OSM, OpenStreetMap, uses a different license than Wikipedia. Could you talk a little bit more about how licensing works when Wikimedia sites display OpenStreetMaps or changes information that was originally placed there? I will say Chris Kerner's kind of already given a half answer to this on the RC.
I'm not aware of... Ryan, do you know? Oh, you got a mic right there.
I mean, I can kind of comment on that very briefly. I'm not a lawyer, so please don't take anything I say as the gospel. But my understanding is that the copyright and the licensing on the data in OpenStreetMap is on the data set and like the collection of data and how it is presented. The individual pieces of data themselves are not copyrighted or copyrightable. And so unless like we are reproducing like verbatim like the exact set of data in a way that is in a way that matches how OpenStreetMap is presenting it, then I think like we get around a lot of the licensing issues. For example, like we are using a different styling for the data, so like we actually present different data than you see on OpenStreetMap. Like you might not see like labels. Yeah, we show a particular subset, so you won't see like the same labels. Like you won't see like every government building labeled, or you won't see like,
nail shop.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's different if you compare like our maps with OpenStreetMaps. But again, like there are probably other issues related to that I don't know about and I'm not covering.
Yeah, sorry, we don't know. That did not come up.
That's good. I'll give Tillman a go. You want a question, Tillman? Or I have another one about OpenStreetMaps in a second.
We can flip back and...
Yeah, I have a question about the taxonomy project. It looks super interesting, right? And I think it's also really useful right now as we focus on mobile contributions. I was wondering if you can say anything about what you found about the relative frequency of contributions. So I saw in the inventory that you actually looked at how often each workflow is being used per day, right? And so do we have information what are the most important, quantitatively speaking, workflows? And also, if you talk about the big three areas, creation and curation moderation, do you have an idea now what people spend most of their time or edits on, or how many editors are active in each area? So, and that's, I should say, that's a question that's on our mind with the web team right now, right, as you probably know.
Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to say is numbers do not tell you the whole picture. There are, if there are 500,000 vandalism edits every day that are reverted immediately by a bot, that's 1 million edits that happen every day with no value added. At the same time, one single edit could create an article in a beautiful state that really helps a lot of people. So, numbers are not great as a proxy for this. There's also some workflows just don't happen as often. People create accounts by the tens of thousands a day. People move articles by the thousands a day. People make edits by the tens of thousands a day. And is moving an article more important than creating an account? Maybe, maybe not. It depends whether the contributor is really valuable and whether the move was good. So with that said, yeah, there are clearly some workflows which are not as important because they don't happen as often, right? So for example, some communities don't bother having a separate workflow for particular kinds of deletion because it doesn't happen often enough for their community to worry about it as a special case, and instead they just deal with it as they go. And so building specialist tools to help out with, so one of the examples that came up is you email someone because you found a blog post that you think is really great and should be an article, and they email back giving you a license to put it on Wikipedia, and then you copy and paste it and tell permission. Really complex workflows. We could build tools to support that, but that happens 3 times a month on the English Wikipedia that we could find. And so that's not a useful place to focus efforts and support community members. And also it varies by wiki. So obviously English Wikipedia is very large, but also the nature of the work is different on different wikis. So Hindi wiki is much more in the kind of article creation and adjustment phase, and less on the article polishing phase as a community. And so the nature of the edits that happen there is a bit to English or Czech or Korean. I'm now petering out of answers to the question you asked, not because you didn't have a good question, but because I've lost track of my thread. It's really important and we should measure more of it. There, yeah.
There are numbers of how frequently it happens within the spreadsheet, so you can go and check it out also. There's question marks because it wasn't easy to determine for everything.
Yeah, so for example, if I am undoing an edit because it was bad, or I'm doing an edit because I'm vandalizing, distinguishing between those two is pretty challenging from a kind of programmatic perspective.
I have another question for Maps from RC real quick. Sorry, who's the mic? It's very, very broad. Sorry, not for Maps. I should say workflows while you're still there. My apologies.
Hello.
Would standardizing workflows be a good idea?
Yes, that is a very good question. So the purpose of this work is not to standardize workflows, it's to understand how workflows are different between different wikis and where there are common issues and uncommon issues. Different issues, not uncommon. So I think the way workflows operate right now is very much decided by communities on their own, and I think there's no real justification for trying to get communities to change workflows unless there's something better in it for that community. So if there is a cool tool that helps you do the workflow in a better way, if only you were to change your workflow like this, then maybe that is useful to the community, but that should still be something for the community to decide in that case. Some wikis have multiple communities that operate in different ways to do the same workflow in different ways as well. So it's not like there's one monolithic community on the English Wikipedia, for instance. But yeah, we're not pushing for, hey, there should be one-size-fits-all kind of policies. And in particular, wikis with 5 active users and wikis with 500,000 active users are radically different in the kind of nature of workflows that will actually work.
Can I ask a question? I'm Joe, I'm visiting, very honoured to be here, part of Full Folians. We're doing a project with Zach and Heather. And new to the organisation, so just a question, but if the taxonomy is designed to help contributors, and we've heard a little bit about the New Readers Project, do you have any strategies for how to disseminate this tool better in the community so that it's more widely adopted?
Well, it's designed to help people understand the wikis, and also the teams to decide which ones to focus on. So a couple purposes. And we don't have a strategy necessarily beyond. We've done this project and we are communicating about it now. It's available on the Wikimedia page, and we're going to have a blog post. So that's the extent of our strategy at this point. Yeah, do you have anything else to add? Yeah.
Just seems like a really valuable tool, and it'd be great to get it in the hands of the community.
Yeah, people can download and use it right now too from that page.
I have a question for you guys. I think I heard you say that one of the purposes was to help identify likely targets for mobile teams to turn into mobile workflows. Did you, I know that you probably haven't made any official determinations, and that may be somebody else's work, but did you come up with any likely candidates?
There's that list. James, do you want to talk to this? Since you're the master of the waiting system.
Master of waiting. Waiting of none. So yes, these top 10 prioritized workflows. So I'm a little antsy to talk about them in a great deal of detail. A, because I don't want to write checks I can't cash, and that's up to the product managers of the individual platforms and what they're building. But the other thing is that the difference between value add between these workflows kind of matters depending on what kind of audience you're trying to serve. So for example, adding an image or video, audio, 3D item to a page. So that's something where there's potentially quite a lot of value to readers on articles, especially from wikis that are smaller and less well illustrated, and where the structured data on commons work is hopefully going to make searching for media much better, and so make it much easier, much more pleasant activity to automatically suggest 5 items that might really illustrate this article well in Hindi that doesn't currently have any images. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to go on at length about these individual workflows, but I'm not sure whether it's great. Yeah. Yeah, so these are the priorities against the weighting criteria that we had earlier. So that covers both kind of ease of use and potential mobile ability. So not necessarily tomorrow editing images is going to be great, but that this is an area to focus on.
I have.
All right. Anything else on?
Sorry, James.
Yeah.
I do have one more question for maps. I keep making you stand up. It's good exercise for you. I know the idea. I'm just going to read these one verbatim as well because it's quite long. I know the idea of bringing OpenStreetMap itself into the Wikimedia fold has been kicked around at various times, but we also didn't have a dedicated maps team anymore because of reasons that don't reflect a lack of importance for continued development in that area. Beyond maintenance for new maps improvements, what are the bigger picture plans for moving maps forward?
Yeah, I think that maps for the moment is going to stand pat. There won't be a lot of development of that media type in the foreseeable future. It's an important it's an important form of multimedia, but it's not a strategic priority for the company to have a full-featured mapping service. So I think the team reading engineering will be doing bug fixing and making sure that it keeps working, but I don't think there'll be a lot of product enhancement for that in the that's planned. Danny?
Hello. Just in addition to that answer is the reason why the collaboration team spent 5 to 6 months working on maps this year is because people voted making improvements to Cartographer up to #1 on the community wishlist survey back in November and December. We are absolutely encouraging people, especially folks who are really interested in maps, were amazingly successful at getting it up to the top of the survey last year. So if that happens again this year or in future years, if folks have improvements that they want to see to the maps project, the community wishlist survey is going to be the way that we will get that to happen, and folks will get like dedicated engineering resources. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Last call. Any other questions on IRC or anybody else in the office that wants to ask? All right. Then we'll move on to a slightly different. before we move on to WikiLove, just remember that we need your help, whether you're a foundation staff member, a affiliate member, a community member, all of the above. We need your help to make sure that this stays a relevant and interesting meeting. And so please submit your ideas, presentations that you want to see, or presentations that you want to give. Up on Meta, we have a page already set up right there. And remember that you don't need to be a staff member. You don't need to be an affiliate member if you want to give one of those presentations, if you think you have something interesting to present to everybody. And with that, we'll have WikiLove. So if there's anybody who wants to give out a shout out to either an individual or a group or a thank you, you can head to the mic and hear again, or Joe can collect it on IRC. Anything else? Anybody? I can start off just with the communications team, especially Greg, who's not here, and Zach, but I know sort of everybody worked on. There was an awesome little party that we set up here for the 15th anniversary that came together relatively quickly and had a beautiful cake, and it was very nice. If you stick around after this, there might be a small little smidgen of that that'll be shown. And a pinata, which went headless with one big swipe from Robert.
I'll just quickly squeeze one in from IRC. WikiLove to Portuguese Wikipedia for reaching 1 million articles.
Yay! And then in the office, Zach.
Is this on? Great. I want to thank additional people involved with the Foundation 15th birthday party. Robert, Sasha, Lynette, everybody who came together to put it together. Brendan, who put all these computers together last minute. Also just general WikiLove for Brendan, getting most of these World Cup matches on. It's been really great, right? Nice work, Brendan.
And Daddy?
Hello. I don't actually know all of the people who were involved in this, so I'm just going to say the people who organized the Wikimedia Foundation's involvement in the LGBT Pride Parade on this last Sunday. Thank you so much. There was a good bunch of people. I think it was somewhere around, like 40 people marching, which was really exciting. It was fun, and I think it makes a lot of people at the organization feel more connected. It was especially nice as we were marching to see people who were really excited to see us and our work, and were really appreciative. There were a bunch, kind of as you go along, every couple minutes, somebody would just like lose their mind. They were so happy to see us there. I love Wikipedia. And I know of at least 2 instances, I heard one of them, where people along the way yelled out, "Thank you for getting me through college." So there you go. Thanks to all the organizers for that.
Definitely, it was a lot of fun. And more people seem to actually know who we are, even though everything says Wikimedia. Maria, did you have something?
I want to thank Moriel for being... Hi. This is Maria. For being such a wonderful leader and an inspiration, and opening spaces for dialogue for many of us.
Anything else on IRC, Joe? Anything else in the office? And with that, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The next meeting will be there. I'll see many of you in Wikimania. And for those who are interested, you can take a small look at what we just put up on the screen, which was a little board that we got together for the party in the office of what other people looked at, like at 15. Thank you.